This is the story of Lost Creek Cemetery, all but forgotten graveyard of a forgotten time in a forgotten place, but hopefully not a forgotten people. It's a desolate place. This is the old county road that used to go to it back in 1935 when they closed it. TBA flooded the waters around it, and we'll take a look at its history. Now we arrive at this old cemetery. Now I'll have pictures from the fall and I'll have pictures from the summer. And they date it back to 1818, but more like 1767 sounds more realistic. And here's the old county road that goes down to the lake. Half of it's on the west side, half of it's on the east side. And here you can see where it goes down. Now if the lake level's down, you can see it just goes down into the lake, into oblivion, disappears. Now here's a good map of showing you Chuck Swan area where Lost Creek Cemetery is located. It's isolated now since it's a lake. And right here is the area in Lost Creek where Lost Creek Cemetery is located. It's just 100 yards from the lake. It's just on the verge of being relocated. But it was just good enough. And this is just a layout of the old road system. I don't dare try to find it. All the roads is under the water. You could go to Tazewell, you could go to Knoxville, you could go to Mainable. Most of the time I'd say they went to Lawson there, the city that's underwater. And there was a bridge there, Longmire Bridge, right in that area, that vicinity. And you can see the old roads that they traveled. Look how sunken they're in. How many times they've been crossed with an old wagon, an old horse, all the way up to the first modern vehicles that come in here. They just wore down. A lot of traffic. This used to be the county roads before the lake cut them all off. It just amazes me what could have traveled here at one time. The traffic, the families, the workers. And here the old roads, they wasn't nothing modern, just old mud roads. That's why they wore out and sunk down into the ground. And I'd say on some bad weather and a lot of rain, here's what they ended up with. A lot of stuck wagons and horses and everything else. They just followed the road beds and the creek beds around these old hollers and around these ridges, whatever nature provided for them to make a road. Now here, the old graveyard, it was surveyed by TBA in 1934. And here's their survey map of it. It says they had 50 acres. 50 acres. Now I've been all around the perimeter of this thing 3 or 4 times. And I keep finding stuff that I don't expect. All the graves is not in that graveyard. Now here's just a scan a picture around the 50 acres. There's 398 graves that they surveyed. And only 84 of them had headstones that you could read, markings on them. 314 only had stones or no stone at all, just a sunken place in the ground. And they say this is the first person buried here at Lost Creek Cemetery, but I don't think it is. Personally, I think he's a lot more settlers before that and everything else. I think there was a lot of Indians buried in here that nobody even knows about. Cherokee, this is all their land. Now this here is real old. This guy here, he was a Sharp, a descendant of Benjamin Sharp from Ireland. He fought with John Sevier at the Battle of Kings Mountain, a turning point in the Revolutionary War. And then a month later, it don't say here, but he fought on Boyd's Creek in Sevier County, fighting an Indian raid on the settlers. So there's a lot of history laying here, a lot of patriots. Now this old area here, just like any other place in the mountains or East Tennessee and the valleys, just good old country people trying to make a living, raise a family, starting a homestead, working a piece of land. And the Cherokee here, this is all their land. The white man come down in here and took it from them. But they was here all the way up to the Trail of Tears. And a lot of them intermixed with the settlers, or vice versa. And they worked this land just like anybody else. And there was some plantations here down in the valley there on all the fertile land. And they had slaves, a few slaves, not many. Most people couldn't afford no slaves. So they was buried in the graveyards with everybody else. Now there was 3 churches here at Lost Creek Cemetery. The first one was 1818 to 1835. Now this is not a true picture of it, this is just something that it would probably resemble. There's no pictures back then of that. And then here's the second church. It was from 1835 to 1885. And this is what it would probably look like. It was a log church. This is not the real picture. Then there was a third and final church here to the lake shut it down. It was from 1885 to 1935. And this is a real picture here. This is the actual picture of the church. They call it the White Church. And it stood here to the lake, isolated the place, and they had to shut it down. Now here the old guys, they're just trying to make a living, working, raising a family, working the land, year after year, just like their fathers did before them. And these old people here, they lived hard, they worked hard. I'd say they played hard. But they were good mountain folk, God-fearing people, and loved their families. You can see their way of life. And they had their own little schools throughout the communities. And they loved their country just like they loved God. And they were proud of it. And they done a lot of this, a lot of baptism, until the lake took it all away. The old river here, Old Clinch River, throughout this valley, East Tennessee, it run for eons down through here. But it did cause some bad flooding. So the government started TVA, Tennessee Valley Authorities, and they wanted to harness that power, stop this flooding, bring electricity to businesses and homes throughout the area. Here they started North Dam. It was the first one of all the dams. They got with all the people all throughout the affected areas, everywhere that the lake would be affected. And they got with the people, what they need to do and how to do it, what they could do for them. And try to acquire the land. Now, this part of the lake, this is called Chuck Swan, it's part of Shark's Chapel, but it isolated it. And when they acquired this land, it's over 24,000 acres they acquired. TVA. Later on, TVA gave it to the state for forestry and recreation. Now here the people, they'd get together and have homecomings and saying their goodbyes and start organizing so they could move to their new areas, new homes. Some went to New Orleans, some went to Knoxville, some went to adjacent counties. And unfortunately, they had to move a lot of graveyards. And TVA was awful good about it. They done what the family needed, what they wanted, how they done it. And they relocated all they could do. But so many of them was just unmarked graves, they didn't know they was unknown. They didn't know who they was. That's the way it was in these mountains back in the old days. You're lucky you had a rock on the headstone. And cemetery by cemetery, they moved them to different locations. All up and down, especially Hickory Valley there in Union County. That's where most of them was relocated to. They even moved these the Indian artifacts, Indian mounds, Indian burial grounds, what they could find, they moved it. But you know well as I do, there's still a lot of people buried under the lake. They didn't know where they was at. Now here on Chuck Swan, there's about 53 cemeteries, and I can only count for 30-something of them. Some of them just can't be found. It's so growed up, so desolate. They're just gone and forgotten about. But what we're looking at today is Lost Creek right here, Mark. It was on the verge of being moved. It was just out of reach of the lake. The only thing that saved it. Now here, North Dam was completed and the gates closed and started backing that water up. March 4th, 1936. I'm sure it took a few weeks or a few months to get it up to the water level. That's a lot of water. Now here are all the old homes when they bought them out and sold them, purchased them. They either tore them down or the lake come up on them. But most of them on Chuck Swan, they was just took down to the foundation. All the little homes down in the valleys that wasn't took down is underwater. It was fertile land up this valley, along this river and these creeks. Good pasture, good crop fields. Now here at Lost Creek Cemetery, it's a vast and it's a beautiful place. Here, it took me a few trips, but I finally found the foundation to this old church. It was built in 1885 and stopped using it in 1935. Here in an old book of Union County, you can see the church. This is where I got the picture from. Lost Creek Primitive Baptist Church. Here on the old map, you can see the foundation where the church was. Way up on the hillside. Like they never found it. You could not find this in the summertime. It's so growed up, it's nothing but a thicket. You barely can find it with no leaves on. And here's in that book, it had the stepping stones. And people say, well, what's stepping stones? Well, this is where people back in the old days, when they had horse and buggy or wagons, the kids and the women would step up and down off their horses and wagons and buggies with, because they were so high off the ground. And this was called the stepping stones. This is in front of that old church foundation. Here's some pictures of it. Now here's the old foundation of the church, about 20 yards from it. This is the front steps right there up into the front door right there. And it's about probably 30 to 40 feet long, about 25, 30 feet wide. And this is made from limestone block. And I'm guessing that they was cut from a quarry not far from here, because there was a couple of quarries on the Sharps Chapel, Chuck Swan area here at one time years ago. You can just see the foundation right here. Like I said, you'd never find this. Nature's just about took it back away. And here you see the cornerstone here, one of the corners. This is the only remnants of the third church. The first and second church was all log and wood. There's nothing left of it. Nature reclaimed it completely. Nothing but a thicket. Now you walk around this, out away from it, you think it's all woods. No, this was all pasture field and crop fields at one time. You could see the rocks piled up where they cleared them. And here out in the middle, away from the graveyard, I'm finding old graves. This is right at the edge of it. You just walk up on them anywhere. And that periwinkle vine is everywhere. I guess in 200 years it could really spread. You can just see here at all the graves I've seen. Just everywhere. And a lot don't even have headstones on them, just sunken places in the ground. Just out here in the middle of nowhere. And there's a lot of veterans buried here at Lost Creek Cemetery. A lot of veterans, Civil War veterans. Some of them you can't hardly read. Here's one of 1812. Just out here in the middle of these woods, way up from the cemetery. Just forgotten past. Here's some of the better ones in the main part of the cemetery. Some of them has been replaced with some good markers by family and descendants. A lot of pioneers buried here, a lot of veterans. And you just scan around here. It's a beautiful place. It's peaceful. But I've noticed you don't hear no songbirds here. Never do I hear a songbird. Occasional crow way up on another ridge somewhere or something, but you never hear no birds singing here. It's sad to say that this cemetery, which many other ones too are falling in decay, nature's trying to grow back up over them. So, I hope you enjoyed this bit of history. I like showing it to you. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.